Wife's betrayal revelation, a genuine tale of deceit. They say curiosity killed the cat, but for me, it was curiosity that expanded my cat. Dear listeners, if this story captivates you, I encourage you to subscribe and join me as I navigate the twists and turns of my journey. You will encounter those who influence my decisions, witness the ambitions I fought to control, and maybe, like me, ponder whether the thrill of exploration is worth the remnants it creates. My name is Claire, and I have always considered myself a devoted partner. I reside in a suburban neighborhood in Atlanta, Georgia, alongside my husband, Michael, and our 2 children. Life unfolded in a cozy rhythm, a sequence of morning coffee, carpool responsibilities, and PTA gatherings. It may not have been glamorous, but it offered a sense of stability. Then arrived those evenings filled with wine, each month. A circle of us neighborhood wives would convene at one of our homes to sip drinks, share stories, and break free from the routine of our daily lives. The laughter rang out, the tales were wild, and the wine poured generously. As time passed, the discussions evolved, growing bolder and more personal. It was Shonda who initially mentioned it. She stood out in the group, her sharp wit and unwavering confidence naturally positioning her as the unofficial leader of our small circle. Ladies, let me tell you about Derek, she began one night, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. The others leaned in, their interest ignited. I listened as well, savoring my Merlot, although I didn't give it much thought initially. Derek was a personal trainer, a tall, muscular black man who worked at the gym Shonda frequented. Her narrative wasn't centered around workouts, however. It was about the excitement of defying conventions, of indulging in taboo desires. You don't understand, Shonda said, her voice low yet filled with energy. He has a way of igniting a spark within you. I hadn't even noticed the extent of my boredom until. She trailed off with a sly smile, allowing the implication to linger in the atmosphere. The other women chuckled uneasily, yet one by one, they started to reveal their own secrets. Linda, the reserved one, confessed that she had her own affair with a man she encountered at a business conference. It's not merely about the tangible things, she remarked, her cheeks tinged with color. It's the thrill, the sensation of being desired once more. When the discussion returned to my direction, I was taken aback. The women I encountered daily at school drop-offs and soccer games were leading hidden lives that were beyond my wildest imagination. I remained mostly silent that night, simply nodding and smiling in response. As I drove home, their stories resonated in my thoughts. The word Shonda spoke lingered in my mind, refusing to fade away. I was unaware of the extent of my boredom. Was I feeling uninterested? Michael and I had shared 12 years of marriage, and although our love for each other remained, the relationship had settled into a routine. Evenings were infrequent and closeness was even less common. For the first time, I allowed myself to ponder what it might be like to experience desire in the way Shonda depicted. Or have someone gaze at me as if I were the sole woman present in the room. The idea was equally exhilarating and frightening. A week later, I found myself at the gym, despite not having worked out in months. I convinced myself it was about getting back in shape. Yet beneath the surface, I recognized it was my curiosity driving me. Will I encounter someone like Derek? Would anyone see me the way Shonda said they saw her? The gym thrummed with energy. Individuals sprinting on treadmills, hoisting weights, and engaging in lively conversations by the water fountain. I felt like an outsider in my worn leggings and baggy t-shirt. Yet I kept my gaze lowered and concentrated on the elliptical machine. And then I saw him. He stood tall, his broad shoulders commanding attention, and his dark skin shimmered subtly even under the unforgiving fluorescent glare. His smile radiated warmth, and his laughter echoed joyfully as he engaged with a client from across the room. I was unaware of his name, yet there was an undeniable attraction that drew me to him. I shook my head, attempting to pull myself back to reality. I was different from Shonda or Linda. I was a devoted partner, a caring parent. As I observed his movements, a small voice in the back of my mind softly questioned, why not? Back at home, the image of him lingered in my mind. The deeper I delved into it, the stronger the allure became. It wasn't solely focused on him. It centered on me, on the desire to experience something once more. I chose not to inform Michael about the gym. It transformed into my cherished refuge, a sanctuary where I could retreat and allow my imagination to soar, if only for a brief moment. However, aspirations can unexpectedly manifest into reality if one isn't vigilant. The gym transformed into my sanctuary. 3 days a week. I would drop the kids at school and head there pretending to be focused on work. Myself, Michael believed it was wonderful that I was finally concentrating on fitness once more. Yet the reality was much more intricate. I was unaware of his name at first, but I soon picked up on his routine. He was consistently present in the mornings, moving energetically between the free weights and offering guidance. Meetings, his laughter resonated throughout the gym, and his confidence was captivating. It wasn't solely his physique. He had a certain presence, as though everything in the world was centered on him. I found myself unable to resist being captivated. One morning, I found myself on the treadmill near the weight section, casting furtive glances at him between strides. I found myself without a plan, utterly unsure of my purpose there, other than simply reveling in his presence. Then it occurred. He noticed my gaze. "Hey! Are you doing all right over there?" His resonant voice filled the room. My heart ceased to beat. His smile held a warmth that was both gentle and inquisitive, as if he truly wanted to know my response. I could feel the warmth creeping up my cheeks as I fumbled for words, saying, "Yeah, just trying to keep my spirits up, He let out a soft laugh and approached, extending his hand. "I'm Marcus. If you need any advice, feel free to ask." "Claire," I said, shaking his hand, the warmth of his palm lingering longer than it ought to have. That fleeting encounter sparked a fire within me. It was innocent enough, but the manner in which he gazed at me, as if I were more than just another suburban mom, igniting a sense of vitality within me that I hadn't experienced in years. In the coming weeks, Marcus and I shared friendly conversations. He would acknowledge me with a nod or a wave upon my arrival. And now and then, he'd pause to inquire about the progress of my workouts. Every time, my heart raced like a young soul experiencing their first infatuation. One day, as I was struggling with a new machine, he suddenly appeared beside me, looking for assistance. He inquired, his tone gentle yet authoritative. I nodded, overwhelmed and unable to find my words. He fine-tuned the settings, our hands lightly touching as he guided me through the process. "There you go," he remarked, taking a step back. "You can do this, Claire." The way he uttered my name sent chills racing down my spine. For the first time in years I felt seen, valued, wanted. That night, as I lay in bed next to Michael, I found myself unable to shake the moment from my thoughts. I experienced a mix of guilt and exhilaration. Michael was already snoring before his head even touched the pillow, completely unaware of the tempest raging within me. I rolled onto my side, gazing at the ceiling, and murmured to myself, "What am I doing?" However, the question didn't deter me. A week later, Shonda invited me over for coffee. I hadn't shared anything about Marcus with her or anyone else, yet I found myself yearning to learn more about her experiences. While we enjoyed our lattes, she began another tale about Derek, her eyes glinting with playful intrigue. "It's not merely the physical aspect," she remarked, leaning closer. "It's how he makes you feel, as if you're the most beautiful, thrilling woman in existence." I nodded, feigning attention, yet my thoughts wandered. In another place. "Was that the way Marcus perceived me, Claire?" Shonda said, pulling me back to the present moment. "There has been a notable silence from you. Is everything all right?" "Indeed, I'm okay, though I wasn't being truthful." Yet, she saw through it all. Her smile grew broader as she leaned in closer. "You possess that certain allure." "What appearance?" I inquired, pretending not to know. "The expression of an individual on the brink of an exhilarating adventure or a foolish decision." That evening, I found myself seated before my laptop, gazing at the gym's website. Marcus' profile was present, detailing his qualifications and providing a succinct biography. A smile crept across my face as I gazed at his photo, his confident grin almost challenging me to move forward. Before I realized it, my fingers were dancing across the keyboard, composing an email. Hello Marcus, this is Claire from the gym. I've been considering the idea of hiring a personal trainer, and wanted to check if you're available. Inform me. Best, Claire. I pressed send before I could reconsider, my heart racing in my chest. The following morning, I received his response. Hi Claire, I would be delighted to assist. Let's arrange a time to discuss your aspirations and formulate a strategy. Catch you at the gym. Excellent, Marcus. I gazed at the screen, my feelings a blend of anticipation and apprehension. I was uncertain. I wasn't sure where this was going, but I felt the unmistakable sensation of crossing a line. I sensed the gravity of my choice as I entered the gym for my inaugural personal training session with Marcus. My heart raced within me, not from the thrill of the impending workout, but from the realization of the unvoiced boundary I was on the verge of crossing. Was this merely about fitness, or was it something much more perilous? Marcus welcomed me with his distinctive smile. Are you prepared to embark on this journey? He inquired, his tone relaxed yet polished. However, the manner in which his gaze lingered for just a moment that stretched longer than it should have sent a chill racing down my spine. As prepared as I can be, I responded, managing a chuckle. He guided me through a sequence of stretches and exercises, his hands occasionally grazing me as he adjusted my form. Every touch, no matter how innocent it appeared, ignited a flurry of sensations within me. I experienced a surge of vitality, a refreshing energy that I hadn't felt in years. Following the session, Marcus offered me a towel. You did great today, he said. You possess an abundance of possibility. His words shouldn't have carried such weight, yet they resonated deeply, offering a sense of validation. As if he recognized something within me that I had yet to discover myself. Thank you, I murmured, my voice scarcely rising above a whisper. Same time next week, he asked, his smile warm and inviting. I nodded, unable to trust myself to speak. As I exited the gym, my mind was a tempest of feelings. A part of me hesitated, yearning to retreat before crossing a line. Yet another part, the one that thrived on thrill and recognition, longed for further adventure. At home, life continued in its familiar rhythm. Michael was occupied with his tasks, while the children engaged in their various activities. Everything appeared to be fine at first glance, yet I sensed an increasing chasm forming between my husband and me. The closeness we once enjoyed had given way to monotony, and I found myself questioning whether he realized the distance that had grown between us. That night, as I lay in bed, my mind wandered to Marcus. The way he made me feel, seen, appreciated, desired, was an experience I hadn't encountered in a long time. I understood it was incorrect to even consider the possibility of more, yet I found myself unable to hold back. The next week, I eagerly anticipated my upcoming session with Marcus. He welcomed me with a smile, and for an hour, I allowed myself to forget all else. The workout presented a challenge, yet I flourished under his encouragement, his insistence, and the way he instilled in me a sense of capability beyond my own expectations. As we concluded, Marcus leaned against the wall, his arms crossed. You're excelling, Claire. I'm truly impressed. His words, so straightforward, yet so heartfelt, sent a shiver through me. Thank you, I replied, brushing the sweat from my brow. I already sense a newfound strength within me. You should, he said, his gaze lingering on me. There's a unique quality about you, Claire. The atmosphere surrounding us transformed, electric with an unsaid intensity. I sensed my breath hitch, my pulse racing. For a brief instant, it seemed as though time had frozen, isolating only the two of us in that singular experience. Thank you, I repeated, my voice trembling. He sat up straight, his face a mask of mystery. Same time next week, indeed, I responded, struggling to hold his gaze. The journey back felt like a haze. I revisited the moment repeatedly in my thoughts, dissecting each word, each glance. Was I envisioning the bond that exists between us, or was it truly tangible? And if it were genuine, what would that signify? That evening, while assisting my children with their homework and getting dinner ready, the memory of Marcus lingered in my mind. I experienced a dual existence, embodying the devoted wife and mother on one side, while yearning for something beyond that role on the other. Michael hardly lifted his gaze from his phone throughout dinner, his focus entirely consumed by work emails. I attempted to draw him into a conversation, yet his replies were brief and unfocused. I felt unseen, like a specter haunting my own space. The subsequent sessions with Marcus unfolded in a similar manner. With every encounter, the bond we shared appeared to deepen. It had evolved beyond merely the workouts. It was about how he made me feel, how he looked at me, how he smiled, how he seemed to understand me in a way no one else did. One day, following a particularly intense session, Marcus inquired if I would like to grab a smoothie at the gym cafe. My heart raced at the invitation, yet I nodded, striving to maintain an air of composure. We lingered in a serene nook, savoring our beverages and engaging in conversation about all things and yet nothing at all. He shared with me the story of his life, detailing his move to Atlanta in search of a new beginning, his enthusiasm for fitness, and the aspirations he holds for the future. I discovered that I was revealing my thoughts to him in a manner I hadn't done with anyone in years. I shared with him the details of my children, my relationship, and my challenges in seeking a sense of purpose. "You deserve to be happy, Claire," he said, his voice a soothing blend of warmth and conviction. "Make sure you remember that." His words struck me with the force of 1,000 weights. Did I earn the right to experience happiness, and if I did, was this the way to that joy? That night, sleep eluded me. I felt as though I was perched on the brink of a precipice, balancing on the edge of security and uncertainty. A part of me longed to withdraw, to seek solace in the familiarity of my life with Michael, yet there was another facet of my being, one I scarcely acknowledged, that yearned to soar. I realized I shouldn't have met him at the cafe that evening. I had a multitude of reasons ready to justify backing out, yet I chose not to. I longed to see him. I had to. As I sat across from Marcus in that quiet corner booth, his presence was charged with energy. He was more than just a man sitting across from me. He was a siren, a lure I could no longer ignore. The dialogue began quite innocently. We discussed fitness, hobbies, and life goals, yet an underlying tension lingered beneath every word, the way his gaze held mine, the way he leaned closer as if every word I spoke was significant. "You deserve to feel alive, Claire," he said at one point, his deep voice barely above a whisper. Those words unraveled me. Perhaps it was the manner in which he expressed those words, or perhaps it was simply that he was articulating precisely what I longed to hear. I found myself in a state of uncertainty. What I understood was that I desired him, and I was weary of suppressing that truth. That evening, following our farewell, I didn't head directly home. My hands trembled on the steering wheel as I drove without direction, my thoughts looping back to the instant his hand had lightly touched mine over the table. It wasn't much, but it was sufficient to stir a deep yearning I had concealed for years. Upon my arrival in the driveway, I noticed that Michael's car was already present. I sat in the stillness, gazing at the inviting glow of the lights within my home. My husband was inside, my children were there, my life was unfolding, yet my mind was consumed by thoughts of Marcus. The next time I encountered him at the gym, there was an unmistakable shift in the atmosphere. We had transcended the roles of trainer and client. The atmosphere surrounding us was charged with unexpressed intensity. "Hey," he said, his voice softer than usual as he came closer to me. "Hey," I responded, my heart pounding. We went through the motions of the workout, but maintaining focus was more challenging this time. Each touch, each glance seemed to draw me nearer to an unavoidable fate. "Let's stretch," he said after the session, guiding me to a secluded corner of the gym. As he directed my movements, his hands rested on my shoulders, my back, my waist. His touch had become intentional. It was purposeful, calculated. As he lifted me from the ground, our faces were mere inches apart, separated. My breath caught as his gaze fixed on me. "Claire," he whispered, his voice thick with unspoken emotion. I interrupted him. I bridged the gap between us, my lips seeking his in a kiss that was fervent, yearning, and long awaited. He reacted without hesitation, pulling me close as he intensified the kiss. It was intense and charged, a liberation of all the pressure that had been accumulating between us. Our journey continued beyond that point. Once the gym had emptied, Marcus guided me to his office in the back. It was tiny, hardly more than a desk and a chair, yet it seemed like a different realm, one where the usual rules were suspended. "Are you certain about this?" he inquired, his gaze probing into my own. His hands. Discovering myself with a gentleness that dissolved every fragment of uncertainty I held, after a long time, I experienced a sense of being desired, genuinely desired. What unfolded next was a whirlwind of fervor and yielding. I released all my inhibitions, all my fears, and surrendered myself to him entirely. As I exited the gym that evening, a wave of exhilaration washed over me. And filled with dread. I had crossed a line that was impossible to uncross, and I was completely unaware of what lay ahead. Yet the thrill of being with Marcus was utterly intoxicating. I convinced myself it would be a one-time thing, that I could simply turn and leave. Act as if it never occurred. I made a mistake. The following session, the palpable tension between us was undeniable. Our exchanges were maintained. Initially formal, yet it wasn't long before we found ourselves back in his office, this time. I acted without a moment's pause. Shonda was right, I told him afterward, my voice trembling as I fastened my shirt, concerning what he inquired, a playful grin dancing across his lips. Regarding the addictive nature of this, I confessed, steering clear of his gaze. He moved in closer, gently tilting my chin upward to meet his gaze. It doesn't have to end, Claire. Unless that's what you desire. I remained silent, yet my quiet spoke volumes. The ensuing weeks unfolded like a tempest of cherished instances and clandestine meetings, following each gym session. Marcus and I would slip away into his office or quietly retreat to his apartment. I experienced a vitality that had eluded me for years, yet with each peak came an overwhelming tide of remorse. I returned home to Michael and the kids, putting on a facade of normalcy while my thoughts raced uncontrollably. With reflections on Marcus, Michael appeared oblivious to the transformations within me, or perhaps he was aware but lacked the interest to inquire. One evening, as we rested in bed, I turned to him. "Have you ever sensed that something has slipped away from us?" "What do you mean?" he inquired, barely glancing away from his phone. I whispered gently. "Do you sense that the magic has faded?" He simply shrugged. "It's simply a facet of marriage, Claire. Everything calms down. It doesn't imply that anything is amiss. However, it did. At least for me. I understood that I ought to conclude my relationship with Marcus, yet I found myself unable to do so. He had transformed into my refuge, my obsession. I longed for the way he ignited my spirit, making me feel vibrant, sought after, and unbound. "Claire, you can't keep living like this," Shonda remarked one afternoon while we enjoyed wine on her patio. "I understand," I confessed. "Even if I didn't truly mean it. Do you have deep feelings for him?" she inquired, her tone grave. I paused. "I'm uncertain." "Well, you'd better sort it out," she warned, her gaze sharpening. "Because secrets like this never remain concealed for long." Her words lingered in my mind. The idea of Michael discovering the truth was excruciating, yet that very dread couldn't deter me. One evening, as I stood in Marcus's apartment, watching him prepare dinner, a wave of guilt washed over me, so intense it almost brought me to my knees. "What seems to be the issue?" he inquired, observing my quietness. "Nothing," I replied, mustering a smile, yet, beneath the surface, I was aware of the reality. I found myself in a situation that felt inescapable, with no straightforward escape in sight. The days merged into weeks, and my involvement with Marcus settled into a pattern I couldn't escape. Following each gym session, I would find my way into his office or rendezvous at his apartment, stoking the flames of the connection we shared, yet, the guilt lingered, an unyielding shadow that would not dissipate. One evening, following a particularly intense confrontation, I found myself sitting in my car outside Marcus's apartment, fixated on the steering wheel. My phone vibrated on the passenger seat. A message from Michael. "What time will you be home? The children are longing for your presence." I gazed at the message, feeling a tightness in my chest. What was I up to? How had I permitted myself to drift so far from the life I had created with Michael and the kids, for the first time? The excitement I experienced with Marcus was eclipsed by the awareness of what I had at stake. That night, as I settled my children into bed, I observed their pure faces. Their small hands clutching their beloved stuffed animals, they were oblivious to the secrets I harbored, the fabrications I wove, and the mere idea of them discovering the truth was unbearable. As I slipped into bed next to Michael, he stirred and turned towards me. "Is everything all right?" he inquired, his voice thick with sleep. "Sure," I replied, managing to put on a smile, feeling worn out. He pressed his lips gently to my forehead and turned away, drifting off to sleep in mere moments. Yet, I remained awake, gazing at the ceiling, my thoughts swirling. I had to conclude it. The following day, I sent a text to Marcus. "We should have a conversation." His response arrived swiftly. "Absolutely, shall we gather at my place once your session concludes?" I consented. Yet the idea of encountering him once more filled me with trepidation. Upon my arrival at his apartment, Marcus welcomed me with his familiar warm smile, yet I found myself unable to reciprocate it. He observed right away. "What seems to be the issue?" he inquired, his tone tinged with worry. I inhaled deeply, the words lodged in my throat. "Marcus, I can no longer continue with this." His expression changed, the smile disappearing. "What are you referring to?" "This," I said, gesturing between us. "It must come to an end, Claire," he murmured, moving nearer, his tone gentle. "I sense that there are feelings you have for me." "Don't say you don't." "I do," I confessed, my voice trembling. "However, I can no longer continue deceiving my husband and my children. They are not worthy of this." He let out a deep breath, his fingers combing through his hair. "I can't bear the thought of losing you. You never truly possessed me," I declared, tears brimming in my eyes. "Not entirely. I cherish my family, Marcus. I cannot afford to lose them." He gazed at me for an extended moment, his expression inscrutable. "At last," he gave a nod. "I comprehend, thank you," I murmured. Pivoting to depart. As I stepped out of his apartment for the final time, a peculiar blend of relief and sorrow washed over me. I had chosen wisely, yet it didn't lessen the difficulty. The next occasion I visited the gym, the atmosphere felt denser. I did my best to steer clear of Marcus, keeping to the machines on the far side of the room. He stayed back. Yet I could sense his gaze lingering on me. It felt uncomfortable and challenging, yet I was resolute in my decision to persevere. I embarked on this journey to improve my self-perception. And I refused to allow my past mistakes to diminish that progress. Yet, each time I encountered Marcus, the allure remained, hidden just beneath the surface. I found myself questioning whether this feeling would ever fade, or if I would forever be drawn to him. At home, conditions began to get better. I took the initiative to reconnect with Michael. Organizing date nights and dedicating more time to the kids. It wasn't flawless, not by a long shot, but it marked the beginning point. One evening, as Michael and I sat on the couch watching a movie, he gently took my hand in his. "You appear to be in a better mood these days," he remarked. "I'm doing my best," I said, gripping his hand tightly. He smiled, and for the first time in ages, I sensed a flicker of hope for our future. Yet, despite my efforts to concentrate on my family, Marcus lingered in my thoughts, refusing to be forgotten. The recollections of our moments shared remained, akin to a melody I found myself unable to cease humming. Could I ever gaze upon him without that spark igniting within me? Could I ever genuinely let go of what we had together? I was unaware of the answers. All I understood was that I had made my decision, and now, I had to come to terms with it. As I exited the gym one evening, I cast a glance over my shoulder and noticed Marcus observing me from across the room. He remained silent, yet his eyes conveyed a wealth of unspoken thoughts. I walked away, entering the refreshing evening air, the burden of my choices heavy upon me. The affair had come to an end, yet the lingering questions it left would torment me for an extended period. Perhaps in certain respects that served as my retribution, the conclusion, or is it merely the beginning?